Sagacity. 7 minutes of exercise for your mind.
Life is a bit of a puzzle, but it's not the perfect puzzle. If a picture on the puzzle is something that we're striving towards, of course, we're going to see that picture as the perfect picture. Excuse me. We're going to see that picture as the perfect picture to us. Our perception of the world, what we think we need, we want, how we want it all to fit nicely together. That is totally understandable. We have to understand that life isn't perfect. We have to understand that nothing within our lives is perfect. But what we also need to understand is there's nothing wrong with striving for something that looks a bit like it. And the reference to a puzzle is off the back of an analogy and a quote, whatever, that I heard on a podcast recently. But it's something around the edges don't need to fit perfectly to create a perfect picture, right? So, contradicting myself a little bit there, so I want to make that clear. I don't believe that there is a perfect picture, but there can be an extremely satisfying picture for us that leaves us content and satisfied and happy with a smile on our face more often than not. And only we will know as individuals how that needs to look. And we will need to understand ourselves well enough that we know which pieces of the puzzle need to come together to create this almost perfect picture for us at this moment in time in our lives, or start building something for the future. And it might involve, and I would suggest it already has at times for you, and it might again in the future, involve moving pieces of your puzzle around. When I work with some of my mentees, some of the young people that I support, but also some of the men through the mental health work, we often talk about how, especially the younger people who are not used to having conversations around long-term change and reflecting on what's gone on before. So sometimes it's a very new and very uncomfortable conversation. So when they're trying to understand my role as, we don't use the word mentor too much with the young people, but you get what I'm saying when I say mentor. When we're talking about what my role could be and the other mentors within our team, coaches as I call them, we say how we are a new piece of the puzzle, and that the things that have not been so great for them, and the people and the places and the situations that they've had come in and out of their life, which is quite commonplace for these young people, they're all pieces of that same puzzle. And this puzzle is going to get bigger potentially for them because they're going to grow their life. But that piece of the puzzle that they don't like, that person, that social worker that they've had a bad experience with for whatever reason, that piece of puzzle should never go away because there's lessons in that, but it can become a smaller piece of their bigger picture puzzle. But what's important for us as we look at our own puzzles is that we're not trying to find the perfect edges to line up with every single edge. So when it comes to you and your journey and where you're at right now and what it is you're trying to achieve, even if you're building a team in a workplace and you're a leader, we do a lot of work with leaders, and some of the best leaders, the most successful, sustainable leaders that constantly find ways to get things done but keep the people around them energized, motivated and sticking around, they don't have the perfect teams. But what they have, where the edges don't fit perfectly, they still have a really nice picture building. And they make people understand that my edge doesn't fit perfectly with that person's edge, but together we can make a beautiful picture, which that analogy would represent a positive outcome in a business setting, a sustainable outcome, profit, growth, whatever, right? So in your personal life, think about how you might have missed opportunities to progress because you kept trying to find the perfect edge to meet the other edge of your puzzle. And when we look at the analogy, the EASY acronym that I've talked about in earlier episodes, the first part of that EASY acronym is the education. Excuse me. Now, I'm not talking about sit-down education in college, school. That's something that could play a part. But for this, I'm talking about day-to-day stuff that we can do to educate ourselves. And that could be listening to a podcast, right? Now, I used to be terrible for it. I catch myself out with my own bullshit these days. But I used to decide very quickly that certain podcast episodes on a series were not for me. I would see who's the guest and I would decide that that person has got nothing going on in their life that's relevant to Benson Mioba, which I now know is a ridiculous thing. If there's something specific and I've got limited time, then of course I should do my research and find something that I've got some sort of prior knowledge, maybe a recommendation or some background context that points me in the right direction. But sometimes if I'm not desperately needing to get something specific, putting on a podcast with someone I've never heard of from a background that's got nothing connected to mine gives me some of the best wisdom I've ever picked up. Because the edges don't fit perfectly, but when they paint a picture and show me what they've been through and how it's adapted in their world, if I've got an open mind, I can adjust that and take some of the similarities and build something really, really special in my world, whether that's professionally or personally. And as someone who's creative and likes to feel like I'm taking the lead on my own life, that really works for me. It wouldn't work for everyone, but I recommend it. So the education side, don't be too rigid unless you really have to be. Be prepared to try different things. With the application of it, so easy is education, then application. Application of the knowledge that you've learned should be flexible. You need to be able to adjust, be agile, and fit it into different ways, and sometimes use a little bit of that and sometimes use a lot of that. Agility with your education will give you much better results, so learn how to apply it. Your support structure. The edges don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be best mates with someone to be beneficial to each other in life. You can be friends, you can be associates, you can be colleagues, you can be people who live in the same community. You don't have to be absolutely perfect for each other and fit like a glove, but you can still add value to each other's lives, even if it's just a one-off connection, an introduction to somebody, and you move away. So that's the support network. And your terms, it's your terms, but you need to be able to adjust your methods to get to the same goals. So the takeaway summary from that is the edges of your puzzle do not have to fit to create a perfect picture, an almost perfect picture.